Here we are.
Here we are, Ticket to Ride, episode
5.
well, 5?
Yeah. Season 2,
Whatever.
episode 5.
Well, we played a whole year of catch-up last year. I mean, it was all about, like we've talked about famously over and over, that, mid-June of 24, heading into Inside Out 2's opening weekend, we were down 27.5% 2024 over 2023. That was not but for obvious reasons, the work stoppages, strikes, the disruption of the release calendar threw everything into disarray. We don't have that dog ate my homework excuse this year. So this is a much better position to be in. We don't want to lead from behind like we were seemed like the whole damn year last year till we got to the very end. So, or even in the summer, which was a great summer, but this is a much more balanced release calendar, the cadence and frequency much better.
Right.
It's and the other thing too, last year you mentioned that Mean Girls in weekend 3 at about $6.5 million led the way. Opening this weekend, we're Friday afternoon, guys, as we're recording this. We have Flight Risk from Lionsgate. We have Presence from Neon. Both of those films look like they're doing okay in the early going.
Lionsgate on a roll right now.
Lionsgate is doing very, very well right now. I mean, following up from Best Christmas Pageant, they rolled into Den of Thieves, which is doing really well. And now Flight Risk, which right now looks like, and again, we're early on a Friday, but I would put the weekend somewhere around 11, 12 million bucks right now for that movie.
Well,
How many wide release movies a year does Lionsgate do you think, Mike?
Lionsgate is in that, 10, 12, 13, wide releases. If you look at the back half of the year, they've got some great titles coming up this year. As always with every studio, there's ebbs and flows, and Lionsgate, obviously I worked there for just a short time, only 23 years. I'm very familiar with, the ebbs and flows, and the last couple of years were a bit on the ebb side, but the upside is coming this year, and they have huge titles such as Michael that are out on the horizon, Ballerina, which is from the John Wick universe. So I would expect that Lionsgate is going to significantly improve their box office.
They have 2 number 1 debuts in January. Not bad.
No, that's great.
That's rather a great accomplishment. I want to switch gears real quick to the Oscar nominations, which were earlier this week, and I have the box office in front of me, but we can go in no particular order, or I could use the alphabetical style, starting with Anora, $14.9 million for that film. The Brutalist, $6.46 million. The Brutalist, by the way, I need to see this movie in 70 millimeter at the Vista Theater. I would love to see it, but it's going into wider release.
Again, there are different ways to handle the Academy campaigns. And I'm going to go back and sound like the old fogey and say, back in 2016, we had a movie called La La Land. And we saw the movie early on. We knew we had something. It was going to be an award contender. And from a release pattern strategy, it was very methodical. And the idea being that you will release the film and expand it based on where these nominations come from. Because when you have a movie like The Brutalist or like a La La Land or like even, something that needs the public to kind of get acquainted with it, if you go too quick, you can burn it out before it's ready to go. And La La Land will be, I'll use that as the example. So we released that in early November or it was mid-November, our first couple of weeks of November. And we did about $200,000 per screen in, I believe it was like 4 locations. The initial impetus from the outside world, especially from exhibitors, were, I need the movie next week. I need it everywhere. But the movie wasn't ready yet. The movie needed to get these nominations. The movie needed to kind of percolate, so to speak, with the audiences. It was a musical. The guy didn't get the girl. It was a very foreign concept of what was going on. And test screenings had told us that it wasn't something that they immediately fell in love with. They needed to be educated about what the movie was they were going to. So David Spitz, who brilliantly put together the distribution plan on that, made sure that every expansion coincided with some kind of noise coming from the outside. And Paul, to your point, when the Academy Award nominations come out, that is when, like The Brutalist is doing, they want to expand their footprint because all the noise is there. It gives the credibility to the film. So A24 doing a fantastic job of methodically putting the movie into the marketplace.
And, a great example of a film that earned a lot of money post nominations due to those nominations was American Beauty, which I think was at about $75 million, as I recall, added another $50 million to its box office. It wound up at $125 million. And that was a movie that I believe opened in September. And it was sort of played out. And then it got those nominations, had an expansion in reaction to that. And that was a long time ago, different world. But still, it's amazing and you're exactly right, Mike, the way that you handle the movie in anticipation of or in reaction to awards, or especially Oscar nominations, is as important as the initial marketing campaign for any movie.
It's the lost art of true theatrical distribution. I mean, we, kind of, and I'm going to go down a kind of a distribution nerd rabbit hole here for a second, but the way things are set up in the marketplace right now, the barrier to entry, as we say, is relatively low. In the old days, back when I had hair, if you were releasing a movie, you needed at least $1,200, $1,300 per theater for a print. You had to buy a 35 millimeter print. You had to get it there. There was a lot of cost and expense. That cost is dramatically reduced these days. You've gone from millions of dollars to thousands of dollars that are needed to do this. So when the impetus is to go as wide as you can initially, but in some cases, that's always not what's best for the movie. Most movies, yes, you go wide, it does what it does and it moves on. But movies like, The Brutalist, like A La La Land, those are movies that you want to cultivate and that you want to truly distribute. And again, as I say, the lost art of theatrical distribution.
An American Sniper, I remember just as that opened Christmas Day in 2014. And then when it went wide, I think it was week 5, it was over Martin Luther King weekend, I believe, it earned $89 million just for the 3 days, $107 million for the 4-day Martin Luther King weekend. So that just shows you how, like you said, the lost art of taking your time with a movie. And we could go back, and I'm not going to do this. We're not going to do this now. But there's a lot of movies where you can Monday morning quarterback and say, wow, if they had just gone limited, rather than blowing it out on a bunch of screens for certain movies, they might have had a better result, because you sort of go all in on a big weekend. And if you don't get a high, you don't have a good number for that weekend, then people move on to the next movie. Whereas if you give a movie some time, and Mike, you would know,
it's a catch-22 a little bit, because the other standpoint would be, okay, let's say you have a movie that you feel like we're going to platform. This movie has all the ingredients. We're gonna start with 2 theaters or 3 theaters. We're then gonna platform. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. I'll bring another example of a movie that we put our best laid plans into, and it kind of went the other way. And that was Ryan Reynolds was in a movie years ago called Buried. And the whole concept of the movie was he was buried underground and he had a certain amount of time to get out. He had a cell phone, and the concept of the movie was they were trying to find him. We went exclusive in New York and LA, and we put together, again, just very methodical plan to expand the movie. We're going to gross here, then we're going to go here, and then the expansion date will be here, and we're going to do all this. Friday morning, we get up, we're looking at the grosses for Buried, and where we're expecting to have maybe, $50,000 a screen, we have $5,000 a screen. So guess what that means?
Right.
Buried is buried. It's
Right.
done.
Right.
So the whole expansion, Paul, at that point where you're like, I'm going to do, that's out the window. Now it's like,
you're right.
I've killed the movie. Not that I've killed, but the movie's DOA. I now have to somehow get it played off. So it goes from, I'm going to baby this movie to, oh my God, how do I
let's
get
get
this?
let's get what we can get.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So
it opened in 11 theaters.
It was 11 that we opened it, but that gross was not very exciting.
It was $100,000.
Right.
Yeah, we did.
Right.
We did.
I don't want to pick on the movie too.
No. It's
$1 million total box office, $1 million.
Well, and again, this is my point, is it's a very fine line between, being able to take that La La Land to, the promised land, and having Buried end up.
So Mike, is it sort of like art, science, and luck? Like it's Sort of a
Yes.
Columbo.
Yes,
know?
that's exactly what it is.
It's a recipe with a lot of ingredients. I mean, if you have movies such as these movies that are releasing around the awards season or the film festival season, and they get a boost from positive response either by the awards or the film festival organizations. Plus, of course, there's always movie reviews going on at the same time, but you sort of have to know what you have, and you have to time these external validators that can build the buzz. And certainly this time of year, with it being, the awards season, the most obvious external validator is the awards nomination season. And that's what we're living with right now. So who knows what will happen with the Brutalist,
Well,
It'd be interesting
that's
to see.
exactly right. And normally, Thaddeus, you make a good point. You're pretty self-aware of what you have. Like you can go into it knowing, okay, I know what we have. It doesn't matter what, the filmmakers or anybody else thinks. We know what the reviews have been. We've taken the temperature. We know where we're going. But then there are times when you have no clue. And, Buried was one of them. Another one for us was, and I'm going deep back on this one, was Crash. And Crash was a movie we went wide. We didn't baby that movie. That was a very polarizing film. That was a movie.
Yeah, I remember that.
I
People
did
either
too.
loved it or didn't like it. Tom Ortenberg, who was the head of our film division at the time, was a very passionate believer in the movie. Tom put together, and he's done this twice now. He did it with Spotlight as well. He put an incredible Academy campaign together where even after the movie kind of played out and was on its way to home entertainment, Tom knew exactly what buttons to push with the Academy members, how to get it in front of them. And if you remember, that movie went on to win Best Picture in a very kind of controversial way, but it was Tom knowing exactly what he had and exactly how to work it.
God, 2005, Mike. Crash.
I have a great story for Crash. This is anyone who's heard me tell this, then just turn this off. So I was invited to the Academy Award party we had at the Chateau Marmont for Crash when we won Best Picture. So it was great. Get there. It's 2005. This was before every cell phone had a camera. So I'm there. Steve Rothenberg, who was the president of distribution at the time, comes in. He comes in with Kathy Schulman, who's the producer on Crash. They have the Academy Award, the Best Picture Academy Award. Steve hands it to me. He says, Mike, here you go. You actually get to hold a Best Picture Academy Award. It was, you're holding it. You're like, wow, that thing's heavy. I hope I don't drop it. No one to take your picture because there's no cell phone cameras or anything. You're like, this is great. I'm so excited. And you're like, I am at the top of the world. We have made it. The next day, I'm driving into work. And if anybody remembers the Lionsgate schedules from the early 2000s, in addition to some of the highbrow stuff, we had some more down the middle. And we had a Larry the Cable Guy movie. And I'm driving in, I get a call, and it's Larry's agent. And Larry's basically like, Larry was in La Habra last night and didn't see the trailer on screen. What are you going to do about it?
Ooh, Larry.
And in that very moment, and Larry, by the way, is a great guy. I want to say that. In that very moment, it came very clear to me that as we won the Academy Award, but we don't get ahead of yourself. Don't get cocky.
Right.
It takes all kinds of movies to make the world.
It does. But that was just, we went from the trailer not being up in La Habra to the Academy Award in, just a couple of hours.
That's great. I love stories like that. And that's what we're going to get more into in Ticket to Ride over the course of this year. Thaddeus Bouchard, Mike Polydorus, Paul de Garabedian, we're all going to pull from the deep well of experience with all these years. Collectively, we've lived, I don't know, not 300 years, but, getting up there. But I want to give a little tease for a future episode. I think we've talked about
hold on
Yeah.
1 second, Paul. I want to go back. Let's go back to the real quick. Let's take the three major categories. Best Picture. Actually 4 categories. Best Picture, Actor, Actress, and Director.
Okay.
What is the Paul? Where you don't have to make a prediction, but where are you thinking on these?
Well, I really, I think for Demi Moore, that's a huge achievement for her. I think Timothée Chalamet is so great as Bob Dylan. This is a really tough. I mean, it's an incredible year. No matter what people were saying about the box office being down 27%. Well, wait, that was us in mid-June. What a great selection of movies. If you look at a movie like The Brutalist, Nora, Conclave, Dune Part
Definitely.
2, Nickel Boys, Amelia Perez, The Substance, Wicked. What a great, and then there were films that weren't nominated that were fantastic from last year. Like one of my personal favorites, Smile 2, horror movie that probably would have, but it was a great movie. In each category, I think it's very competitive, although Adrian Brody won the Globe. And we've seen historically that doesn't always then follow that you win the Oscar. Now it can, but it doesn't always.
Well, and I think a little of that's different too. The way the Hollywood Foreign Press has now changed how they award these.
That's right. That's right. So I haven't really answered your question. I just think that in every category, it's very competitive. And for me, a movie that I haven't seen yet, but I want to see it as soon as possible in 70 millimeter. 70 millimeter. I'm so excited about that format. The Brutalist is 3.5 hours, intermission. Love that idea. Brady Corbett, the director, said, in what world is this a success? And even though it's only up to 6.5 million, look at how much attention that movie has received.
Absolutely.
Punching way above its weight, as we like to say, in so many different realms. But that's a cool one. And the fact that Dune Part 2, so Chalamet has 2 movies nominated for Best Picture. And Dune Part 2 is a March release. And it's interesting if you go back, and we should do a special Oscar episode just devoted, because I have a whole list of all the Best Picture nominees going back to the 90s and what each of them earned pre-nomination, post-nomination.
That'll be really, we should definitely do that on the next episode.
Really interesting. And then it all changed when they went to the 10 possible nominations.
Right.
That kind of changed everything. So I want to tease that future episode. I think we should also do a Valentine's episode devoted to movies that have either opened or played on Valentine's Day. I found some quick trivia on Valentine's Day. You know how we talked about The Exorcist opened the day after Christmas in 73? Nosferatu opened on Christmas Day last year. Well, Silence of the Lambs opened on Valentine's Day.
How interesting.
Talk about a date movie.
Well, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I would say there is a, what's the word I'm kind of looking for? We kind of over analyze, the release date versus the time of year, that kind of thing, and then to your point, Nosferatu, nothing says Christmas like a vampire Robert Eggers movie. I think, but the movie's going on to do almost $100 million. Why? Because it's all about the content, and you don't necessarily need to marry the content to the season. And, again, we kidded about it a while back, but Die Hard, the ultimate Christmas movie, which was released in July. It's all about, is it a good movie and where that goes? But I would love to do that, because the other thing, Valentine's Day, more than not, will kind of dovetail with President's Day weekend. That weekend is turned into one of the biggest movie-going weekends of the year. And, kind of under the radar of everybody. And Paul, you alluded to it this year, where we have Captain America, we have Paddington.
Absolutely.
We have, the holdovers that are in there. That is going to be a mammoth weekend.
And you look at June of this year, okay? I was just, because I do this, for fun. I browse the release calendar, it's very exciting. But it actually is, if you look at June 6th, Ballerina, June 13, Elio, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, the Disney film, the animated film. Ballerina, obviously, the John Wick universe spinoff sort of thing, which is really cool. How to Train Your Dragon from Universal.
That's a live-action remake.
Action. It's just 28 years later, Megan 2.0, Untitled Sony Marvel live action, and Formula One, F1, the Brad Pitt, Joe Kosinski movie. That's a June, that's a blockbuster June, and that's in the wake of Mission Impossible and Lilo and Stitch opening over Memorial Weekend. So, wow, we're in store for a lot of excitement.
Think about that. You're looking at a 5-6 week period that is going to dwarf what the same period did last year. Now, obviously, once you get to the point where Inside Out 2 opened up, it's going to even out a little bit. But
that's right.
There's a lot to be optimistic, in our business.
And we have to be patient, right? Because you have a couple of, the last few weekends haven't been $100 million over, anything like that. And this weekend will certainly be much bigger than the same weekend a year ago. But this is the natural ebb and flow of the box office. And I just hope that we all realize, and I know we do, but when people start making big pronouncements about the industry, that there's a lot of unpredictability there, but it's much more predictable this year when you can go look at that release calendar. And again, showing how important the release calendar is. And I think it's really, in a way, a great lesson that 24 provided in showing how important dating is for, release dating is for movies, and having that consistent slate. Plus, going back to the production schedule, having that pipeline working in full sync. And then, Mike, like you point out, the way that films are marketed, and Thaddeus, what you were saying earlier about that as well. I mean, this all fits together, all these puzzles.
When you release a film, it isn't like, I decided, 2 weeks ago, this is the date and I'm just going to do it. There is a lot of planning that goes into it. And there is a lot of, theorizing and analyzing. And, you want to take the release schedule, and you want to make sure that, you're not going up against something that is, exactly like you are. If you are, it depends, obviously, if you're a Marvel title, that's a little bit different than if you're just like a standard action movie. But the idea being, you want to strategically, place your flags so that, one, you're not cannibalizing your other movies, and two, you have the best opportunity success. And, that means making sure that you're avoiding all the speed bumps that are out.
It's funny, Mike, when you were saying that, it's so funny, all the experiences we've had in the industry. And when you were mentioning about that, about not counter programming or all that goes into this recipe for success. And again, some of it's luck, some of it's art, some of it's science. I think back to that Perfect Storm weekend where The Patriot also opened. So you had like The Perfect Storm and The Patriot going head to head. And, The Perfect Storm was PG. Patriot was rated R, a Mel Gibson film, and Perfect Storm, obviously, George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg. But that was one where you think, wow, nobody blinked on that weekend, because you would think, why would those movies are similar in some ways and not in others. But we weren't doing the mashup of titles back then. I guess
No, and looking back, Oppenheimer and Barbie, initially everybody was looking at that like, I can't believe they're both going head to head.
Right.
But they were great counter programming.
And it created an event, obviously, because they were great. The counter programming itself was the story, was the media story that then, as you know, Paul, very well, right? Because you were being interviewed, 1,000 times as that was leading up to and got released.
But I think social media created that, because back, you could have had The Perfect Patriot, right? When The Patriot and Perfect Storm opened, but that wasn't going to land the way it would now. But I do think, though, that the mashup of titles is getting a little, Glicked kind of work, but Barbenheimer was just that gold.
Well, it was again, to try to mash those up, it's lightning in a bottle. And to your point, the social media, it has to feel organic and viral. And Barbie and Oppenheimer absolutely worked, and I think they both drove their grosses to go extremely higher.
Mike, and Thaddeus, I liked Saw Patrol that weekend. That was a good one.
We all have our articles to write, so I'm sure we'll have opportunities to throw in our little quips, our little sort of combinations and everything.
That's right.
Well, I think if you look at 2025 and 2026 release schedule, even if you go out another 12 months, it's just a combination of volume and quality, right? We're forecasting at 24 films in 2025 that have the potential to do $100 million. That's 24 films, and only 2 of them that we're forecasting anyways are in the first quarter. So as you get into as you're kind of overviewing the release calendar in June and beyond, the hits are going to keep on coming, I think, anyways, based on the forecast.
I agree. And that's your Screen Dollars projections,
Thaddeus? Yes, right. That's correct. Yes, right.
I like that. And then I want to give Mike a shout out. He was in an article by the great Sarah Whitten as a movie marketing expert today, the day of recording, about Wicked and the marketing of that. So everyone should go take a look at that article. It's really good, as always, from our friend Sarah Whitten. And so this is another. Do we have any other housekeeping or anything else?
You were going to tease an episode coming up.
Well, that was, for me, it's actually 2 now that I think about it. We must do an Oscar.
Yes.
I think we should do a very deep data dive into Oscar,
yes.
I won't just spring it on you guys nor the audience. We'll tease it, and I'll send you guys all the data. Literally, I have back to, I think it's 95 or 96 looking at just the Best Picture nominees, what they earned up to the nomination, what it meant after nominations. And again, this relies on a bunch of different things, like what was the release date? Is the film completely played out? Is it on home video? Was there a re-release in January or February? The Oscars back then were on a different night. Remember when the Oscars were on Mondays?
Yes.
Way back in the day. So that'll be cool. And then I think we should do a Valentine's Day retrospective, because there was like Silence of the Lambs. And then, there's some counter programming that goes on. And that was a Thursday, by the way, in 91, just for you
How interesting.
playing along at home. They really worked it around that date. They could have opened Silence of the Lambs on that Friday the 15th, but they went, and a lot of movies, as we know, opened on Friday the 13th, especially a horror movie.
That is, if you had a horror movie and it was Friday the 13th, you would circle that and try to say, we've got to make that date.
But Mike, like you said earlier, it used to seem like horror movies were always October or the fall. But you can have huge horror movies any time of year. You go into that darkened movie theater, it's always Friday the 13th.
It is. But at the same time, you look at October, and that always seems to be, smattered with horror thrillers.
Yeah, because it works then too, but it can also work other times of the year. But
Well, there's so many horror movies that, you can't pack them all into October. They really
That's
have
right.
to be spaced out over the course of the year, because it's a genre. There is as many horror movies as superhero movies,
It's a
so
genre that, as old as the movies themselves.
that's right. Just ask Nosferatu.
that's right.
Yeah. And with that, Paul, we probably should wrap up.
We'll wrap it up for Ticket to Ride Season 3,
Super.
Episode 5. Thaddeus Bouchard, Screen Dollars, Mike Polydorus, Paper Airplane Media, and me, Paul DeGarabedian, ComScore. We really are enjoying doing these. We are not faltering in our promise to deliver every couple of weeks a new
Absolutely.
episode.
Don't forget to like the podcast, leave comments, and follow us at
Like
all your favorite, wherever you get your podcasts.
Wherever
And send us suggestions if you have ideas for future
we don't
podcast
want any
topics.
suggestions, Thaddeus. No. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification.
There you
Will
go.
do.
Yeah,
Will do.
exactly.
I love it. All
Okay.
right, we'll see everybody next time on Ticket to Ride. Next episode to follow in a couple of weeks, but other surprises too. Look out for some short form videos and other fun things coming from Ticket to Ride. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay. Ciao, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
She's got a ticket to ride, and she don't care.